The UK government has recently secretly supplied Ukraine with an additional batch of Storm Shadow cruise missiles. This was reported by Bloomberg, citing its own sources. The exact number of missiles delivered has not been disclosed. The article states that the missile delivery was carried out to ensure Ukraine has sufficient stockpiles ahead of the winter months, during which, according to the UK, the Kremlin may intensify attacks on Ukrainian civilians. Bloomberg emphasizes that the UK and its allies are trying to show Vladimir Putin that Western support for Ukraine will surpass the Russian economy's ability to sustain its military efforts. Storm Shadows are high-precision, air-launched guided missiles with a range of over 250 kilometers. Ukrainian forces first used British long-range weapons against military targets on Russian territory in November of last year. In October of this year, the General Staff of Ukraine announced that a strike had been carried out. The Bryansk chemical plant was hit using long-range Storm Shadow missiles, which managed to penetrate the Russian air defense system.
On October 21st, 2025, the air forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, in coordination with the ground forces, naval forces, and other components of Ukraine's defense forces, struck the Bryansk chemical plant.
The agency also shared that the Bryansk chemical plant is an important part of the military-industrial complex of the aggressor country. Recently, the Wall Street Journal reported that the US administration has lifted a key restriction on Ukraine's use of certain missiles. These are long-range missiles provided by Western allies, which has allowed Kyiv to expand attacks on targets inside Russia. They were also awaiting approval from President Donald Trump to provide Ukraine with long-range AGAVK missiles. But he himself said that he is not considering this possibility for now. Political scientist and military expert from the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Kirilo Sazonov, gave his assessment of the Storm Shadow.
These are really awesome missiles, really great. And honestly, when we talk about Tomahawks, it's nothing, guys. Believe me, the British Storm missiles are fantastic. Especially now when there are no problems with the guidance system that we are receiving, the coordinates for strikes are provided by the United States of America. And this will continue because Russia's attempt playing games with Trump ended very badly.
Earlier, Anatoly Krapchinsky, deputy general director of a company producing electronic warfare equipment and an aviation expert, stated to the Ukrainian Defense Forces, ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles are needed more than the American Tomahawks. According to military observer Denis Popovich, with the help of Storm Shadow missiles, the Ukrainian armed forces will be able to keep Crimea and the Kerch Bridge under full fire control. Defense Express military expert Valery Ryabik reported that, according to preliminary calculations, about 10 such missiles could disrupt Russian communications across the bridge over the Kerch Strait. He noted that this is a very precise missile which uses a terrain contour matching system for navigation. And in the final stage, the Storm Shadow jettisons the nose cone from its warhead and homes in on the target using an electro-optical guidance system.
Oh, I'm really so scared. I am literally trembling.
Residents of Saratov and Engels heard the sounds of sirens and explosions on the night of November 3rd. In the Saratov region, the Saratov oil refinery once again came under attack. The attack was confirmed by the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. As the agency writes,
on the night of November 3rd, units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces struck the Saratov oil refinery in the Saratov region of the Russian Federation.
The General Staff notes that the Saratov oil refinery is one of the oldest oil processing enterprises in Russia. It is involved in meeting the needs of the armed forces of the aggressor country. According to the Telegram channel Astra, this is at least the sixth attack on the plant since the beginning of this year. Prior to this, the refinery was attacked on October 16th. A day earlier, on the night of November 2nd, drones attacked the Russian port of Tuapse in the Krasnodar region. The operational headquarters of the Krasnodar region reported that, as a result of the attack, a tanker and an oil terminal were damaged. Satellite images showing the aftermath of the recent attack have appeared online. It is reported that at least 2 hits struck the pipeline of Transneft's oil terminal. Damage to an oil tanker has also been recorded. The port of Tuapse is one of the key hubs for the export of Russian oil and petroleum products. Recently, drones have been attacking Russia's oil refineries, energy facilities, and military enterprises almost every day. This is increasingly depleting the economy of the aggressor country, which is already barely holding on. As noted by Ivan Us, an expert from the United Ukraine Analytical Center on the Freedom Channel, a fuel shortage has already hit several Russian regions, and sooner or later it will reach its peak.
So far, Moscow itself has not faced a major gasoline crisis. But everywhere else, whether west, east, north, or south of Moscow, problems are already starting to arise. And these problems will only get worse over time because the strikes are ongoing, persistent, and unremitting.
Russians may end up not only without fuel, but also without electricity. Drones are striking more and more thermal power plants in Russian regions. As journalist Michael Naki reports, residents of the aggressor country are facing the threat of a blackout. In particular, this warning was issued by the commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Madar Brody.
The Ukrainian armed forces have already carried out numerous strikes on power stations and substations. Electricity and heating are periodically cut off in many cities across Russia and in the occupied territories.
Naki reminds us that Ukraine is attacking Russia's energy facilities in response to Russian terror against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. The journalist believes that very soon this campaign will reach a new level, with Flamingo missiles being used almost daily. And then Russians will surely feel the consequences of the war they started. Meanwhile, in Russia's Belgorod, local residents have already started stealing generators that were meant to protect against blackouts. This was stated by the governor of Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Gladkov, who called the situation a catastrophically big problem.
The government of the Russian Federation is looking for those to blame for the breakdown of negotiations between dictator Vladimir Putin and US President Donald Trump in Budapest. The Kremlin placed the blame for this on the Russian Foreign Ministry, since the memorandum with its unrealistic and excessive demands, which sounded like an ultimatum, caused Trump's anger and the subsequent cancellation of the meeting. Lavrov has been named the main culprit. It was he whom the Western press called the main factor in the cooling of relations with the US. Several media outlets report that Lavrov came to the meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio unprepared, refused to engage in discussion, and took an overly hardline stance on Ukraine, trying to follow the Kremlin's instructions to the letter. According to the Telegram channel Nexta, insiders say that Lavrov received a severe reprimand from Putin. The head of the Russian Foreign Ministry was almost accused of sabotage, since under no circumstances was he supposed to disrupt the summit. Amid the scandals, Kirill Dmitriev flew to the US in an attempt to ease attention. Journalist Rostislav Mirzagilov shared insider information from the Kremlin about Lavrov's fate. Putin is seriously considering the option of dismissing the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation as soon as the intensity of Russia's aggressive actions against Ukraine decreases.
When he gets removed, Putin will start looking for someone to blame. That's typical for him. So, accordingly, Lavrov is the perfect scapegoat. He has said a lot of nasty things. He has cursed at the Russian Federation's international partners.
On October 16th, US President Donald Trump announced that he intended to hold a meeting with Putin in Hungary. He did not announce the date of the summit, but noted that talks between the foreign ministers were planned beforehand. Already on October 22nd, Trump stated that he had canceled the summit with Putin. On the same day, the US Treasury Department imposed sanctions against Russian oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. Soon after, Trump stated that he would not meet with Putin or waste his time until there was an understanding about reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and the Russian Federation.
The situation in the Pokrovsk direction of the Donetsk region remains tense. According to the latest data from Deep State, the enemy has advanced near Pokrovsk and close to Volnovo. According to reports from the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, as of 8 o'clock in the morning on November 3rd, Ukrainian forces have repelled 68 assault actions by the aggressor in the Pokrovsk direction. As stated by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in his evening address on November 2nd, there have been results in eliminating Russian occupiers in the Pokrovsk direction.
The front. There were reports from the military today. First and foremost, attention is on the Pokrovsk direction. There are results in eliminating the occupier. I would especially like to mention the units of the 79th Separate Air Assault Brigade.
Zelensky also thanked the Ukrainian military for their effective and active actions both in the Pokrovsk area and in Kupiansk. Earlier, Bild analyst Julian Robka reported that Russian forces have entrenched themselves in almost all areas of Pokrovsk. According to him, more than 1,000 Ukrainian soldiers are holding the defense within the city. The enemy forces outnumber the Ukrainian troops by 10 times and possess significantly greater firepower. At the same time, as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, stated on November 1st, there is no encirclement or blockade of the city. On his Telegram channel, he reported,
In the Pokrovsk-Mirnohrad agglomeration, our soldiers have to withstand the pressure of an enemy group numbering in the thousands, which continues to attempt to infiltrate residential areas and cut off our supply routes. However, there is no encirclement or blockade of the cities. We are doing everything possible to maintain logistics.
Syrsky noted that a comprehensive operation to destroy and drive out enemy forces from Pokrovsk is ongoing. According to him, the enemy in Pokrovsk is paying the highest price for its attempts to carry out the Kremlin dictator's order to occupy the Ukrainian Donbas. As previously stated by Ukrainian Armed Forces officer Serhiy Tsikhotsky on the air of Kyiv 24, the Russian occupiers who entered Pokrovsk are mostly hiding. According to him, they are waiting for reinforcements and assistance. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, as of November 3rd, Ukrainian troops repelled 12 enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Vovchansk, Vovchansky Khutori, Tyke, and Otradne in the southern Slobozhansky direction. In the Kupiansk direction, on November 2nd, there were 13 attacks by the invaders, all of which were repelled by Ukrainian soldiers. In the Lyman direction, the enemy attacked 7 times, attempting to break through the defenses in the areas of the settlements of Hrikivka, Kolodets, Zarekne, and towards the settlement of Korovi Yar. In the Kostiantynivka direction, the enemy carried out 18 attacks. In the Oleksandrivka direction, the enemy launched 29 attacks on November 2nd. The remaining sectors of the front remain less tense. Since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the occupiers' losses have amounted to more than 1,144,000 people.
Lee Song-kwon. He said that since September of this year, about 5,000 North Korean construction troops have been gradually redeployed to Russia and will be mobilized to restore infrastructure. According to the South Korean lawmaker, there are signs of preparation and selection of personnel for the deployment of additional troops. At the same time, according to South Korean intelligence, about 10,000 North Korean military personnel are currently deployed near the Russian-Ukrainian border. Last year, North Korea sent about 10,000 North Korean soldiers to the war against Ukraine for the first time as reinforcements for Russian troops. In April of this year, Pyongyang acknowledged the participation of its soldiers in the war. According to South Korean intelligence, about 2,000 of them have been killed. Recently, it became known that 2 North Korean soldiers, who were captured by defense forces in the Kursk region in January of this year, are requesting to be sent to South Korea. According to South Korean intelligence, North Korean soldiers have orders to commit suicide to avoid capture, so their return to North Korea could be a death sentence. As is known, North Korea is one of Russia's main allies. The countries have signed a comprehensive strategic partnership agreement that provides for mutual military assistance. Pyongyang is providing Moscow with significant support in the war against Ukraine, which includes supplying weapons and sending military personnel and workers. In particular, North Korea is supplying the aggressor country with millions of artillery shells.
Russian occupying forces are continuing their push in Pokrovsk, Donetsk Oblast. The enemy is using armored and light armored vehicles. This statement was made by Major Vladimir Nazarenko, an officer of the Legion of Freedom. Speaking on the occupiers' tactics, the officer noted that they have not changed. It involves the maximum use of all resources available to the enemy.
In reality, in most cases, it's not their successes that are growing, but their losses.
Nazarenko noted that the enemy operates in small groups, and for the most part, these enemy forces are detected and destroyed.
The biggest problem is significant logistics and movement. The so-called kill zone is constantly expanding. Due to their chosen pace, the enemy is suffering huge losses, as in most cases their groups don't even reach the staging areas.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that dates have been set to finally clear the city of Kupiansk in Kharkiv Oblast of Russian occupiers.
60 Russians remain in Kupiansk. A clearing operation is underway. We will clear it all out. We know. In principle, the dates have been set.
On the night of November 4th, drones attacked regions in Russia. The media reported fires at several facilities. For now, only one attack has been officially confirmed, on a petrochemical plant in the Republic of Bashkortostan. Meanwhile, the publication Astra showed video from the city. The sounds of explosions can be heard. It also released footage of the fire that broke out after the drone attack. As the OSINT analyst explained,
Preliminarily, this video shows the source of the fire to be either railway tankers on the tracks or storage tanks slightly to the north. However, according to local residents, there are several fires at the plant.
additionally, explosions were heard overnight in the city of Kshtovo in Russia's Nizhny Novgorod Oblast. A fire was reported in the industrial zone near the Lukoil Nizhegorod Nefteyorgzintez oil refinery and a petrochemical plant. Explosions were also reported in the Volgograd Oblast. According to Russian media reports, the Frolovskaya electrical substation caught fire there.
The main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine has destroyed the headquarters of one of the enemy's strongest units, Rubicon. According to the agency, the headquarters of the Russian occupiers was discovered in a partially destroyed house in the occupied town of Avdiivka, Donetsk region. The GUR notes that the enemy unit Rubicon specializes in the use of unmanned systems. It is reported that this is one of the most combat-capable structures of the Russian occupation army, on which the aggressor country spends significant resources. The agency reported,
Using the obtained coordinates of the enemy's location, GUR specialists, working in densely built-up urban conditions, skillfully directed FP2 unmanned systems at the Russians, each equipped with a warhead weighing over 105 kilograms.
Intelligence summarized, as a result of the strike, officers and drone operators of the Russian Rubicon who were in the headquarters were eliminated. In September of this year, journalists from Radio Liberty discovered the name of the commander of the Russian Center for Advanced Drone Technologies Rubicon. It turned out to be Russian Colonel Sergei Budnikov. The report also states that the occupiers' training base was found thanks to a segment by Russian propagandist Vladimir Solovyov. The location was identified by a sign above the entrance to the restroom with a distinctive design and an illuminated display above it. This indicates that the Rubicon training base is located in the Congress halls of the Patriot Exhibition Center in the Moscow region. The Radio Liberty investigation states that the Rubicon Center has existed since at least July 2024. During the fighting in the Kursk region, Rubicon's military personnel tried to disrupt the defense forces' logistics using drones.
Russia is unable to manufacture critical components for the much-hyped Su-57 fighter jets promoted by Russian propaganda. This was reported by the international intelligence community Inform Napalm, which, together with the Phoenix Cyber Center, conducted a multi-level operation against the Experimental Design Bureau of Engine Building. This Russian enterprise manufactures components for strategic aviation and spacecraft. It is noted that hackers managed to gain access to internal systems and secret technical documentation, which for several months was used in the interests of the defense forces and their allies. Among these were documents related to the production of components for the fifth-generation Su-57 fighter jet. Propagandists call this aircraft the future of Russian combat aviation. However, as it turned out, Russia is not capable of manufacturing these components on its own. Their production is critically dependent on imported machinery, the purchase of which has almost come to a halt due to sanctions. As is known, on October 23rd of this year, the OKBM company was included in the 19th package of European Union sanctions. The decision was made after the results of a cyber operation were made public. Consequently, due to a shortage of high-tech components, Russia will not be able to produce new Su-57 fighter jets, of which the aggressor country already has very few. It is worth noting that in June 2024, Ukrainian forces struck one of the Su-57s on Russian territory, marking the first time in history that this fighter jet was hit.
The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine has denied rumors regarding the situation in the Pokrovsk-Mirnohorod direction. None of the units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces are encircled or blocked in this agglomeration. The situation in Pokrovsk itself remains difficult, but it is fully under the control of Ukrainian defenders. This was reported by Major Andriy Kovalev, a representative of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. According to him, the spread of information about the encirclement of the Ukrainian armed forces near Pokrovsk may be part of enemy information and psychological operations. In reality, a comprehensive operation by the defense forces is underway aimed at stabilizing the situation.
Currently, a comprehensive operation is being conducted to identify enemy forces in the urban area, destroy them, and drive the Russian occupiers out of Pokrovsk.
Russian troops continue to intensify their efforts and conduct active assault operations in the Pokrovsk area. Much is at stake in this direction for Ukraine and its allies. This was stated by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky during his visit to the command post of the 7th Rapid Response Corps of the Air Assault Forces of the Armed Forces of Ukraine. The president thanked the soldiers for their service in this hotspot, emphasizing its strategic importance.
This is very important, because it's not just our land. Above all, it is the enemy's psychological pressure on our state and on all our allies. And much is being decided precisely in this direction.
At the same time, Colonel retired of the Armed Forces of Ukraine military expert, pilot and instructor Roman Svitan warned about possible provocations by the Russians in Pokrovsk. According to him, Russian occupiers in Pokrovsk entered the rear of Ukrainian forces wearing civilian clothes. The Russians gathered in the city posing as civilians and then began combat operations. It is quite likely that the invaders may resort to this method again. According to analysts from the Deep State Project, Pokrovsk is being gradually absorbed. The occupiers are setting up positions in the city. Russian troops also have places to amass forces and control their logistics. The authors of the report note that at the same time, the Ukrainian armed forces continue both clearing operations and the elimination of the enemy by all available means. Drone pilots play a key role.
Protests have taken place in India over the deception and deaths of its citizens who were tricked into being sent to the front lines in Russia to fight against Ukraine. Dozens of families from different states in India are demanding that their loved ones be brought home and that those responsible for the recruitment be punished. According to relatives, young men were recruited through agents who promised them legal jobs with high salaries and accommodation. But instead, they were pressured into signing contracts in Russian and sent to the front lines with minimal training. The protesters held placards with photos of the young men in uniform. Some of them have died. According to media reports, the families of those killed are not receiving any compensation from the Russian authorities. One of the placards read, "Putin, stop killing innocent Indians." The story of one of the Indian students who signed a contract with the Russian Ministry of Defense was told by his friend.
Yes, my friend. Well, he signed the contract and then just 10 days later, that's it. I don't know where he is, how do you say it? It's body, nobody after all, as they say.
Meanwhile, North Korea in September sent about 5,000 so-called builders to the Russian Federation to help restore infrastructure. This was stated by South Korean lawmaker Lee Sung-kwon.
About 5,000 North Korean construction troops have been gradually redeployed to Russia since September and are expected to be mobilized for infrastructure restoration.
According to the South Korean lawmaker, there have been ongoing signs of preparation and selection of personnel for the deployment of additional troops. At the same time, according to South Korean intelligence, about 10,000 DPRK military personnel are currently deployed near the Russian-Ukrainian border. South Korea estimates that at least 600 North Korean soldiers have been killed in the war in Ukraine and thousands more have been wounded. Analysts emphasize that the DPRK receives financial aid, military technology, food, and energy resources from the Russian Federation in exchange for supplying troops. Thanks to this, Pyongyang is able to avoid the consequences of international sanctions imposed on its nuclear and missile programs. In turn, an international sanctions monitoring group wrote in its report last month that North Korea plans to send 40,000 workers to Russia, including several delegations of IT specialists. According to UN sanctions, North Korean workers are prohibited from earning money abroad. At the same time, 2 captured North Korean soldiers have stated that they want to escape to South Korea. The Constitution of South Korea stipulates that all Koreans, including those from the north, are full citizens. This rule also applies to prisoners of war in Ukraine. It is known that about a year ago, the defense forces captured the first North Korean soldiers who were fighting against Ukraine in the Kursk region. The North Koreans did not speak Ukrainian, English, or Russian, so communication with them was only possible through Korean interpreters. At the time of capture, one of the foreigners had a Russian-style military ID issued in the name of another person registered in the Republic of Tuva, Russian Federation. The other North Korean had no documents at all. Additionally, Ukrainian intelligence has released new evidence of war crimes committed by international mercenaries from Colombia serving in the Russian army.
In the United States, a B-52 bomber was spotted over California carrying a new nuclear cruise missile, which resembles the new low-observable AGM-181A cruise missile. This was reported by The Aviationist. The photo was taken by aviation photographer Ian Recchio. In close-up shots, you can see a T-shaped tail with 3 surfaces, folding wings under the fuselage, and wedge-shaped nose and tail sections. These features match the official image of the LRSO missile. The bomber was spotted while flying over Owens Valley, California. According to the plans of the U.S. Air Force, the new AGM-181A long-range standoff missile is intended to replace the outdated stockpile of B-version ALCM nuclear warhead missiles. It is known that this missile has been in service with the U.S. Air Force since the 1980s as one of the elements of the nuclear triad in the nuclear deterrence system. The missile can be mounted on B-52 and B-21 Raider bombers. The report states, against the backdrop of preparations for a production decision in fiscal year 2027, testing activity has increased, as evidenced by the appearance of a B-52 with this missile. Earlier, Newsweek wrote, the US has already scheduled the first tests of the nuclear missile because Russia and China continue to test their arsenals. Last week, the head of the White House ordered the Department of Defense to immediately begin testing nuclear weapons. It is also known that the U.S. Space Force is preparing to deploy 2 new remotely controlled weapons systems designed to jam Chinese and Russian satellites, Bloomberg reports. Earlier, the media reported that in September, B-52 strategic bombers took off from U.S. bases heading toward Europe. This sudden redeployment took place against the backdrop of an act of aggression against a NATO country. Russian drones breached Polish airspace and caused material damage. Polish air defense opened fire on aerial targets.
The Caucasus is rearming. In Azerbaijan, new air defense missile systems produced by China were shown for the first time ahead of the military parade. We are talking about the Chinese FD-2000B surface-to-air missile system. Previously, such a system had not been seen in the country's military arsenal, writes Union, citing militaryarsenal. The appearance of the Chinese air defense missile system in Azerbaijan's arsenal indicates a strengthening of military technical cooperation between the two countries. In the rehearsal video, the distinctive architecture of the FD-2000B launcher, mounted on a 4-axle chassis, is clearly visible. This is an export modification of the Chinese long-range air defense system HQ-9. The system is based on the Soviet S-300 but has been significantly modernized, particularly with modern electronics and an improved guidance algorithm. The complex is designed to destroy aircraft, cruise missiles, and short-range ballistic missiles. Its stated range reaches up to 200 kilometers, and the maximum interception altitude is about 27 kilometers. Previously, Baku had not reported acquiring this system. However, in 2018, Azerbaijan expressed interest in it while commenting on similar purchases by Pakistan. At that time, the system was considered as an alternative to the Russian S-300, which was already in service with the Azerbaijani army. According to military analyst Mariner, the Russian short-range air defense system Tor-M2 was also featured in the parade. As analysts note, this may indicate an upgrade and expansion of the country's air defense capabilities. The authors explained that Azerbaijan's air defense consists of several layers of defense. They have Russian Tor-M2 and S-300 systems as well as the Israeli Barak MX system. They believe that the Chinese FD-2008 could make this network more flexible and multi-layered.
On November 5th, Yekaterina Mizulina, head of the so-called Safe Internet League of the aggressor country Russia, and the singer Shaman demonstratively registered their marriage at the registry office in temporarily occupied Donetsk.
I now pronounce you, by the power vested in me, husband and wife.
For the 33-year-old singer, Mizulina became his third wife. 40-year-old Mizulina had not previously been officially married. The couple is known for their outrageous actions and statements. Shaman previously caused a wave of bewilderment among Russians. He decided to congratulate Yekaterina Mizulina on her birthday in an original way. In the video, he and Mizulina are walking through the forest, after which the couple finds a large box tied with a ribbon in the colors of the Russian flag. Inside was the logo of a newly created party called We.
Yekaterina, for your birthday, I'm giving you something that no one has ever given anyone else in this world. I'm giving you a party, and our party will be called We.
Yekaterina Mizulina is known for her anti-Ukrainian stance and her attacks on freedom of speech in Russia. She advocates for censorship in the Russian segment of the internet, initiating sanctions and fines for Russian media outlets. The Mirror notes that she seeks to eradicate criticism of the dictator, especially regarding the war against Ukraine. Mizulina has also repeatedly filed complaints with law enforcement agencies against bloggers and musicians. For example, she previously reported her newlywed husband Yegor Krid's competitor to the authorities. She did not like his large-scale concert at Luzhniki. In one of her interviews, Mizulina criticized people who left Russia because of the war.
Some crowing roosters made a number of public statements before leaving our country. For this, of course, we especially thank our so-called Western partners, because this is a cleansing from these undesirable citizens.
Earlier, Stat Duma Deputy Vladislav Davankov demanded that Mizulina provide a report on the use of 200 million rubles from the budget. Shaman is one of the main performers of the era of the so-called special military operation. In addition to the fact that Shaman married Mizulina on November 5th, he also became Singer of the Year in Russia for the third time in a row. Following him are Oleg Gazmanov and Sergei Lazarev. It is known that Shaman supports Russian aggression against Ukraine. He has performed concerts in the occupied Donbass and the Crimean Peninsula. On his Telegram channel, Shaman posted a video with the caption, "Crimea is Russia." Also in February 2023, Shaman, also known as Yaroslav Dronov, was in the temporarily occupied part of the left bank of Kherson region, where he performed at a commissioned concert in support of the Kremlin regime. For supporting the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the singer is under sanctions from 27 EU countries, Ukraine and Canada. On January 29, 2024, Mizulina was added to the sanctions list of 27 EU countries for human rights violations and serious and systematic violations of freedom of expression. The Ukrainian flag is once again flying over the city council building in Pokrovsk. It was returned to the building by assault troops of the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala.
They advanced into the building, cleared it, eliminated the enemy, and raised the Ukrainian flag.
The city council building in Pokrovsk is located in the southern part of the city, deep within the so-called gray zone. But thanks to the fact that the operation was carefully planned and the element of surprise, the soldiers were not only able to reach the designated point, but also complete their combat mission. Ukrainian forces are systematically destroying Russians in Pokrovsk, in the Donetsk region, and in the surrounding areas, said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Other units of ours fighting in this direction have also achieved the necessary results. Our assault units, our drone system operators, our National Guard soldiers, the Military Law Enforcement Service, the main intelligence directorate, and of course, all our brigades defending the Donetsk region.
Earlier, Artyom Pribilnov, head of the communications department of the 155th Separate Mechanized Brigade named after Anna of Kiev, reported that Russian occupiers had penetrated deep into Pokrovsk. Pribilnov shared that according to data from the 7th Air Assault Corps, there are about 200 Russian soldiers in Pokrovsk.
Our brigade inflicts the majority of its losses precisely on the approaches to the city.
Pribilnov said that not only Gore fighters are involved in clearing the city of enemy soldiers, but all units present in the city as well. He admitted that it is the specialized units that are trained to operate in urban environments.
Urban warfare, believe me, is the most difficult condition for conducting war. The enemy, by the way, is not prepared for such conditions. Judging by intercepted communications, the servicemen who ended up as our prisoners, and the information from their phones, well, I wouldn't call them professional soldiers.
The servicemen added that the 155th Brigade of the Russian Federation Army was not withdrawn from the direction because it was completely destroyed. The enemy has intensified firepower using reconnaissance and strike drones as well as guided aerial bombs.
The enemy has completely changed the face of the city. Pokrovsk now looks like a ruin altogether. It's not even comparable to how it was this summer.
According to independent observers, about 80% of the territory of Pokrovsk is either under the control of the Russian Federation or in a gray zone, meaning it is not controlled by anyone. Political analyst and military officer in the AFU Kirill Sazonov states that Pokrovsk is now, except for a small sector in the north and south, effectively no man's land.
Zverevo still hasn't been blocked off. That's the most problematic spot. However, in the area of Pokrovsk and Donetsk, warehouses burn daily, mines and shells explode, as do headquarters and fuel depots. This is the work of drones, missiles, and mobile SBU groups, as well as all intelligence services. In the city itself, some people are holding their positions, while mobile special forces groups move through the city and clear out these positions.
According to the Ukrainian General Staff, in the Pokrovsk direction, Ukrainian soldiers have stopped 100 enemy attacks. There is active resistance to enemy infantry groups trying to gain a foothold. The Pokrovsk Defense Forces of Ukraine are conducting strike and search operations. On November 5th, the enemy launched 1 missile and 55 airstrikes against the positions of Ukrainian units and populated areas. In addition, they used 400 kamikaze drones and carried out more than 4,000 shellings of our troops' positions and populated areas. Ukrainian forces are repelling the occupiers. Aviation, missile forces, and artillery of the defense forces struck 2 areas where enemy personnel, weapons, and military equipment were concentrated, as well as an enemy artillery system. In the Pokrovsk direction near Mirnorod, the Russians launched an assault. Taking advantage of bad weather, they tried to break through the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses using heavy equipment. Ukrainian soldiers repelled the offensive using fiber optic drones, destroying several armored vehicles. Earlier, the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces reported that there is no encirclement of Ukrainian units and formations in Pokrovsk. It is noted that the Russians continue to suffer losses in the battles for the city. The Minister of Defense of the aggressor state, Andrei Belousov, reported to the President of the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, about U.S. plans to deploy Dark Eagle missile systems in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region.
The flight time of such a missile from Germany, where this missile system is planned to be deployed to targets in central Russia, would be about 6 to 7 minutes. In
response, Putin instructed several ministries to analyze whether the United States is violating the provisions of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. In
the event that the United States or other countries that are parties to the relevant treaty carry out such tests, then Russia must also respond accordingly, in line with its obligations. Take appropriate retaliatory measures.
Also at the meeting, Security Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu stated that it is still not entirely clear what exactly the head of the White House meant by the phrase about resuming U.S. nuclear weapons tests.
At this time, we do not fully understand the further actions of the United States of America with respect to the conduct of nuclear weapons tests.
Belousov, for his part, proposed to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests on Novaya Zemlya. Taking
into account the above, I consider it advisable to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests immediately. The readiness of the Central Test Site forces on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago makes it possible to conduct the tests within a short time frame.
Belousov also informed Putin that the United States is working on the development of a new intercontinental ballistic missile, the Sentinel, with
the new nuclear warhead. Its firing range will be 13,000 kilometers.
Defense Minister Belousov's report came after Putin announced the completion of tests of the Burevestnik unlimited range cruise missile and reported the start of work on its deployment.
This refers specifically to the process of testing the Burevestnik, which is an unlimited range cruise missile equipped with a nuclear power unit. I am aware that I also have a detailed report from the industry side regarding this matter as well, which in general remains largely unknown to the public at this time. According to the Ministry of Defense's assessment, this is truly a unique product, unmatched anywhere else in the world.
Soon after, he also announced the testing of the Poseidon nuclear torpedo, which, according to him, has no equal in terms of speed and operating depth. Analysts consider the testing of 2 powerful nuclear weapon carriers, the Burevestnik cruise missile and the Poseidon underwater drone, to be a clear signal from Moscow to Washington. By showcasing its nuclear arsenal, the Kremlin is trying to force the United States to come to the negotiating table and to accept Russia's broader terms, which go beyond the scope of Russia's war against Ukraine. American President Donald Trump called Putin's statements inappropriate and reminded that the U.S. has a nuclear submarine near the Russian coast, while emphasizing that Moscow should focus on ending the war against Ukraine. And on October 30th, the U.S. President ordered the first nuclear weapons test in 33 years to begin. Let us recall that on October 5th, the U.S. Space Force conducted a test launch of the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile.
The European Union is preparing to almost completely stop issuing multiple entry Schengen visas to Russian citizens. This was reported by Politico, citing European officials. The new measure means that Russian citizens will mainly be issued single-entry travel documents. Exceptions will only be possible on humanitarian grounds or for individuals who hold citizenship of EU countries. The restrictions could be approved as early as this week. It is noted that this step is another stage in the bloc's efforts to punish Russia for its invasion of Ukraine. The authors of the article remind that at the end of 2022, Brussels suspended the visa facilitation agreement with Moscow, which made it more difficult for citizens of the aggressor country to obtain visas, and also made it more expensive. Some member states, such as the Baltic countries, have gone even further by banning or severely restricting the entry of Russians into their territory. However, the issuance of visas remains a national competence. This means that while the European Commission may make the process more difficult, it cannot impose a complete and comprehensive ban on the entry of Russian visitors. Currently, tourist visas for Russian citizens are still being liberally issued by Hungary, France, Spain, and Italy, according to Politico. Separately, and as part of the 19th package of EU sanctions, there are plans to restrict the movement of Russian diplomats. According to the publication, they will be required to notify the state in advance if they are traveling within the Schengen area. This is described as a way to counter increasingly hostile actions to the Kremlin's intelligence activities. Recall that in October, the Czech Republic already banned entry to Russian diplomats and holders of service passports who do not have accreditation in the country. In addition, as of September 30th, all Czech visa centers in Russia have been closed. This is according to a statement posted on the website of their operating company. It states that the last day for submitting documents at the regional Czech visa centers was September 26th and at the Moscow center, September 29th. After this date, applications for Czech Schengen visas must be submitted directly to the consular section of the Embassy of the Czech Republic in Moscow. The Russian dictator Vladimir Putin has created his own clan within state structures. As reported by the publication Prukt, the president of the aggressor country has helped at least 24 of his relatives secure jobs in government bodies and state-owned companies. The publication notes that in the families of Putin and his closest relatives, 3 generations are already employed, making his family the most influential clan in modern Russia. This is a record level of nepotism among Russian leaders in recent decades, the publication emphasizes. According to journalists, income connected to state structures is received by Putin's former wife, Lyudmila Ocheretnaya, before their divorce, as well as by those referred to in the media as Putin's lovers, Alina Kabeva, Svetlana Krivonogik, and Alisa Karcheva, and also by both his official daughters, Marina Vorontsova and Ekaterina Tikhonova. Putin plans to become one of the longest-serving rulers in world history and to effectively establish a new dynasty by making his own son Ivan the heir to the Russian presidency. This is reported by the British tabloid Daily Star. The British journalist refers to information from the Russian investigative journalist I.I. Davlyachina, as well as comments from political analyst and former Putin speechwriter Abbas Galiamov. According to investigators, the Russian president plans to remain in power until the age of 97 and may possibly hand over the keys to the Kremlin to his son Ivan, who is currently only 10 years old. This allegedly became known during a private conversation between Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping, during which they discussed longevity and the possibility of living to 150 years old. They did not know that their conversation was overheard, which caused concern among Chinese officials who tried to conceal the details of the conversation. Vladimir Putin does not publicly acknowledge having children, nor does he acknowledge his relationship with former gymnast Alina Kabayeva, the mother of Ivan and his brother Vladimir.
On November 5th, an unusual glow was spotted in the sky over Moscow. According to local social media pages, residents of the capital of the aggressor country and the Moscow region could see yet another meteorite. This is already the second such incident in the past 10 days. At that time, a mysterious object with a greenish glow flew across the sky at around 6:30 in the morning. It was seen in various cities, including Istra and Fryazino, as well as Ramenskoye, Lyubertsy, and Krasnogorsk. As reported by the Telegram channel Ushot, leading research fellow of the Institute of Space Research, Nathan Eismont, said that a small meteorite could have produced such a light when entering the Earth's atmosphere. According to another theory, it could also have been a fragment of space debris. However, social media users have their own theories.
This is already the 3rd incident this month. If these aren't rockets but meteorites, then there's a lot more flying around.
The suspicious dates of the tests coincide with the meteorites. First, we have tests. Then a meteorite appears. Now the Americans, and again a meteorite.
Let us recall that on November 5th, the US conducted a test launch of an unarmed Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile. The missile traveled approximately 6,800 kilometers from the base in California to the Missile Defense Test Range in the Republic of the Marshall Islands. On the same day, Russian Defense Minister Belousov reported to Putin about US plans to deploy Dark Eagle missile systems in Europe and the Asia-Pacific region.
The flight time of such a missile from the territory of Germany, where this missile system is planned to be deployed to targets in central Russia, will be about 6 to 7 minutes.
And afterwards, he proposed to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests on Novaya Zemlya. With
the above in mind, I consider it appropriate to begin preparations for full-scale nuclear tests immediately. The readiness of the Central Test Site forces on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago makes it possible to carry them out within a short time frame.
Recently, Putin also announced the completion of tests of the Burevestnik cruise missile with unlimited range. Soon after, he also stated that the Poseidon nuclear torpedo had been tested.
US President Donald Trump made a statement about progress regarding the resolution of the war in Ukraine. During a meeting with representatives of Central Asian countries at the White House, he said that his administration had already brokered a peace agreement between Armenia and Azerbaijan. He emphasized that this is one of 8 wars that the US has ended in 8 months.
We are striving to end another one, if possible, between Russia and Ukraine. We haven't achieved that yet, but I believe we have made significant progress.
Responding to a question about the effectiveness of the sanctions imposed on Russia, Trump noted that Russian oil exports have dropped significantly and expressed hope that this would help bring the war in Ukraine to an end. At the same time, Ukraine is engaged in positive negotiations to purchase Tomahawk missiles and other long-range weapons. This is happening despite the fact that Donald Trump has made it clear he does not yet plan to send them to Kyiv. This was reported by Ukraine's ambassador to the US, Olga Stefanishina, on the Balance of Power program on Bloomberg TV.
It's not just about Tomahawk missiles, but also various types of other long and short-range missiles. And I can only say that this is quite positive.
She emphasized that the discussions are still ongoing, but Ukraine has many delegations working to increase financial resources for purchasing additional military equipment from the US. Responding to a question about Russian attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure in recent weeks, Stefanishina emphasized that this is definitely a very difficult period for Ukraine. She also added, any easing of pressure on Russia will be seen as giving it the green light to expand its capabilities. US Presidential Special Envoy Steve Witkoff also reported that there has been progress in resolving the war in Ukraine. According to him, in the United States, Russia's war against Ukraine is considered one of the most important to resolve, and there has been certain progress in addressing it. Witkoff added that the war in Ukraine should be resolved after Gaza.
Hungary's only oil giant is ready to stop buying Russian oil. The Hungarian oil company MOL has stated that it can purchase most of its oil from non-Russian sources. As reported by Bloomberg, the statement was made on the eve of a meeting between US President Donald Trump and Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban in Washington, where sanctions against Russian oil will be discussed. The company, which operates oil refineries in Hungary and Slovakia, reported that it can obtain up to 80% of its oil from alternative sources via a pipeline from Croatia if Russian oil supplies through Ukraine are halted. According to Bloomberg analysts, this is a turning point after months of rhetoric from Orban, who had claimed that Hungary had no alternative to Russian oil when it comes to energy. Pressure on the Hungarian Prime Minister was exerted in particular by the policies of US President Donald Trump. A week earlier, the American leader stated that he would not make an exception for Hungary regarding sanctions. Recently, Viktor Orban has been losing support even among the Hungarian population. According to Hungarian media, a crisis is growing within Hungary's ruling party. The root cause is that, for the first time, Orban has a strong opponent, Péter Magyar. In addition, as the Polish publication Rzeczpospolita writes, Viktor Orban's Hungarian economic model is experiencing a deep crisis. According to the publication, the average Hungarian has already become poorer than citizens of Romania and even Russia. This means that in April 2026, for the first time in a decade and a half, Orban could lose the election.
The Azerbaijani army will be brought up to NATO standards. This was announced by the country's president, Ilham Aliyev, during a meeting with a delegation from the alliance. The head of state emphasized that the Azerbaijani army is being aligned with NATO standards and in this context is closely cooperating with the Turkish army, according to a press release. Recently, the parties signed a memorandum of understanding aimed at strengthening mutual military security. Aliyev noted that Azerbaijan's relations with NATO go beyond the military sphere. The agenda also includes issues of regional development, energy security, and other areas of cooperation. At the meeting, prospects for further cooperation and current regional challenges were discussed. In addition, Azerbaijan is rearming its army and modernizing its air defense systems. For example, before the military parade in Baku, new air defense missile systems produced by China were shown for the first time. Specifically, this refers to the Chinese FD-2000B surface-to-air missile system. Previously, such systems had not been observed in the country's armed forces, according to Union citing Militarnia. The appearance of the Chinese air defense missile system in Azerbaijan's arsenal indicates a strengthening of military technical cooperation between the two countries. Previously, Baku had not reported the acquisition of this system. However, in 2018, Azerbaijan expressed interest in it while commenting on similar purchases by Pakistan. At that time, the system was considered as an alternative to the Russian S-300, which was already in service with the Azerbaijani army. The authors explained that Azerbaijan's air defense consists of several layers of protection. They have Russian Tor M2 and S-300 systems, as well as the Israeli Barak 8 system. They believe that the Chinese FD-2000B could make this network more flexible and multi-layered.
On November 6, drones from the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine attacked a key enterprise of the aggressor country, Russia, in the Republic of Bashkortostan. According to the agency, the UAVs successfully struck the Sterlitamak petrochemical plant. This is one of the main enterprises in the petrochemical industry of the aggressor state. The main intelligence directorate notes that the plant produces goods for the needs of the Russian occupation army and the military-industrial complex, including in particular anol, aviation gasoline, and synthetic polymers. According to intelligence reports,
as a result of the strike on the enemy petrochemical facility, a fire broke out in the workshop that produces agidol, an additive for aviation gasoline.
Russians are not welcome in Europe. The European Commission has banned the issuance of multiple entry visas to citizens of the Russian Federation. This was stated in an official announcement on the agency's website. It is noted that the reason for tightening the rules for issuing visas to Russians is the increased security risks due to Russia's unprovoked aggression against Ukraine, as well as Moscow's use of migration as a weapon, acts of sabotage, and potential visa abuse. According to the new restrictions, Russians will no longer be able to obtain multiple entry visas. The statement explained.
This means that Russian citizens will have to submit a new visa application every time they plan a trip to the EU, which will allow for thorough and frequent checks of applicants in order to reduce any potential security risks.
As noted by European Commission Vice President Kaja Kallas, Europe is currently facing unprecedented disturbances and acts of sabotage involving drones on the territory of European countries. She emphasized that from now on, travel to the EU and free movement within its territory is a privilege for Russian citizens, not an automatic right. As reported by Reuters, Russia's hybrid war against Europe is becoming increasingly apparent. Since the beginning of September, Russian drones and fighter jets have been violating the airspace of European countries more and more frequently, leading to restrictions on the operations of local airports. Drones have been detected in Belgium, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Germany, and a number of other countries. One of the most high-profile Russian provocations was the incident in Poland on the night of September 10th. At that time, around 20 Russian drones entered the country's airspace, forcing NATO to deploy its fighter jets.
Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov turned out to come from a spy family with a Bolshevik past, according to the publication Projekt. Despite being the only Kremlin official who is always in the public eye, this has not prevented him from keeping his origins in the very elite of Soviet society a secret for decades. In Peskov's family tree, the Communist Party and the KGB are intertwined. His ancestors were held in high esteem under Lenin, Stalin, and Brezhnev, the publication notes. In Peskov's official biography published by the TASS agency, there is not a single word about his mother. It only states that he was born into the family of Soviet and Russian diplomat Sergei Peskov. Peskov's mother may have served in the security services. The Peskov family lived in a government building on Presnya. Their neighbors were KGB and foreign trade employees. The father of the Russian president's press secretary, Sergei Peskov, most likely worked in intelligence. Originally from Mukachevo, Ukraine, he graduated from the Institute of Asian and African Countries and spent many years working in the Middle East under the cover of friendship societies and solidarity committees with countries of people's democracy. This was a standard cover for Soviet intelligence officers during the Cold War. 2 marriages helped the president's press secretary advance in his career. His first wife was Anastasia, the granddaughter of Stalin's Marshal Semyon Budyonny. The second marriage played an important role in Peskov's career. He married Ekaterina, the daughter of Russian diplomat Vladimir Solotsinsky. It was Solotsinsky who, in 1999, recommended Peskov as a translator during Boris Yeltsin's visit to Turkey. After that, he was transferred to the Kremlin. This is how Peskov became the second person after Alexei Gromov responsible for Putin's media image in the Kremlin.